Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Weird things seen while hunting. Hey all, been a lurker on and off for years, but finally figured I'd post. And I may as well start with the one thing I've experienced that may be paranormal. So I was like 13 or 14, and I was in a cedar swamp with my dad doing some deer hunting. I was sitting in a tree stand like 15 feet off the ground, and it was getting dark. Not weird if you've ever been in a cedar swamp. They get dark quick. So I just sit tight and wait for my dad to come from his stand. As I sit there, and it gets darker, I notice something out in the woods maybe 30 yards from where I'm sitting. It's big, like probably 8 feet tall, and it's looking at me from over a tip over. I can't get a good look at it, only seeing a silhouette in the rapidly increasing darkness. But it kinda has the body shape of a stereotypical werewolf. What I could see of the head didn't seem to match. The ears, if that's what they were, didn't stick up a lot, and I couldn't really make out a large snout, but it was big and its head seemed to jut more forward than up. Anyway, I'm curious, and I'm not getting any bad vibes, and I've got a 20 gauge, so I feel safe climbing down to go look at it. Yes, I know, that was dumb, but I was a teen with a shotgun, so I felt safe. So I climbed down, walked a bit towards it, and then got a flash of sanity and climbed back up the stand. Once back up there, I couldn't see it anymore, but that probably had more to do with how dark it was. So that's it. I didn't hear anything, and all I saw was a weird silhouette of something while out hunting. Nothing bad happened, and Dad got me like 20 minutes later. Only other weird things I've seen in those woods was what looked like a huge-ass coyote, like size of a St. Bernard huge. Which is weird because it's not even like Wisconsin has a lot of wolves either. So that's my story. Do you folks have any weird hunting stories?
Hey guys, I go hunting about twice a year. I figured I'd actually share some of the stories of weird stuff we've seen and heard of in our usual hunting ground. Be me, be 13. First time hunting in my life. Have always wanted to go hunting with my dad every year, but I was always too young. Dad figures I'm old enough and takes my bro and me hunting. No stranger to the woods at this point. My backyard growing up was this massive-ass forest. Got weird stories about that too. Get to our cabin in Michigan where we usually hunt. Michigan is crawling with more deer than New York has rats, so it's good hunting grounds. My uncle is staying in the cabin with us. His friend was there too, already trashed on cheap beer. Dad decides he's got the right idea and he starts drinking with him. It was the first night, so no actual hunting. Just chilling and watching old horror movies. The Day the Earth Stood Still comes on. Classic-ass movie. Uncle's drunk friend starts ranting about how he definitely believes in aliens, alright, bud. He continues saying he's had experiences even in the woods here. Me, the naive little child, starts paying serious attention to him. He begins telling us about one of those things. Describes this massive circle of trees that had been smashed to pieces. Says it was a perfect circle of trees about 20 yards wide, all blended up. We asked what he meant by blended up. He explains that all the trees weren't just smashed, but twisted all in the same direction, as something had landed on them while spinning. A little freaked out, my dad changed the subject to the beer they were drinking. Next morning, my uncle wakes us up early. Uncle says he shot a buck with a crossbow and needs help finding it. Uncle's friend comes with us, not remembering anything from the night prior. We go to the spot he shot it and begin tracking. I'm a good-ass tracker, a straight-up natural at it, don't know how. My dad would hunt in the woods at home and have me come help him find deer he shot late at night. Anyways, I start spotting blood like crazy. Tiny drops at first, then spewings. Spewing is when the deer is coughing blood. Follow the blood for hours. The deer probably is actually still alive somehow. Just getting spooked by us following it. Give up after 4 hours. Uncle is going to continue hunting. We go on with our day, hiking back to our truck. Dad's got an E-Trex that maps out our locations in the woods. E-Trex isn't working a whole lot. Keep going in circles. Start marking trees with a knife to help us to not walk in circles. Starting to get dark. That's when we found it. It was actually just how my uncle's friend described it. Massive trees in a massive circle, twisted up in the strangest ways you can imagine. We walked around it. It was actually a perfect circle. My dad said saucer landing. Goosebumps. Finally, I noticed the smell. Entire area smells like rotten meat and fecal matter. In some areas it was hardly noticeable. Others it would cause us to gag. We started to move away from the area. E-Trex finally starts working as soon as we get far away from the circle. Make it back to the truck just as dusk hits. Drive home and tell my uncle and his friend about the saucer landing. Uncle's friend specified when he found it was 5 years ago. Tells us it smelled like shit at the time. We told him the smell was still there. He seemed shocked. Tells us that he thought it was a deer he lost earlier that day. We spent the rest of the night drinking, watching movies again. All of us are pretty quiet. I'm actually a firm believer in aliens because of that incident. OP here. This story is when I was around like 10, 12 maybe. I often played in the woods behind our house, so remembering these stories will be a bit harder because I was always back there, playing in the woods one day, pretending to hunt for dragons or some shit. Was obsessed with weird creatures like fairies and stuff because my nan is an Irish immigrant and would tell us old stories about little men and invisible monsters that lived in the mountains. Always wanted to see those things she talked about, but as I got older, I kinda stopped believing. Anyways, in the woods one day, playing in the creek, looking for salamanders or cool bugs, start getting out of the creek and start playing around, hitting trees with a stick, drumming on old logs and shit. Suddenly the woods go quiet, most quiet they've ever been. No birds chirping, no wind, nothing. Decide to start making noise to fill the void, knocking on trees with sticks again. Notice every time I knock, I hear something deeper in the woods knock back. Knock once, woods knock twice. Knock twice back, woods knock once. Getting a little freaked out at this point. Finally, I started to run out of the roads, taking my usual path back to my house. Reach an area of the woods where the birds are chirping and the wind is blowing. Tell my mom about it. She thinks it's part of my weird little games I play out there. Didn't go back into the woods for weeks. I never saw what was knocking back, but when I told my brother, he told me to start playing in the woods closer to the house and stop going so deep in, saying he's heard weird shit out there when working out in our garage and didn't want me getting kidnapped or some shit.
Be me, 17 years old. Friend's family grows wheat. I have a big wild hog problem. Recruit me and my buddy who was 16 at the time to shoot some hogs for them. Offered to pay. Not much, but it's money and shooting hogs is fun, so we go with it. I bring my Hatfield SAS with a big box of slugs. My buddy brings a 410 with a box of 000 buckshot and a pocket full of slugs. Family's youngest son wants to tag along. He was about 11 at the time, so his parents naturally didn't trust him with a live firearm. Poor kid is stuck with a .357 snub-nose airgun replica. Won't do shit to a hog, but he still wanted to come. Screw it, why not? Practically have to glue the earmuffs to the kid's head. We get in a truck and their uncle drives us out in the fields. We found a group of about 12 of them. We get as close as we can without spooking them. Uncle cuts the engine and we take aim. Tell the kid not to shoot until we do. I aim for the biggest one. I shoot first. The biggie goes down. My buddy shoots and hits 3 of them with one shot. As they start to scatter, I unload 4 more slugs into the group. I drop about 3 more and the rest get away. Kid claims he killed one. Yeah, right. We laughed it off and let the kid think he did a good job. We found another group, about 10 this time. Decide to give the kid the first shot. He hits the closest one square in the eye. Aimbot.jpg. The one the kid hits screamed for a bit before falling over. Did he actually kill it? We unload in the general direction of the rest of them. We drop all of them. Go up close to see if that closest one is dead. The kid leads the expedition. Makes a straight beeline from the truck to the hog. We caught up to him and the hogs were still breathing. Aw shit. Medical bill. Before we can raise our guns, it rears up and hooks the kid's leg. I raise my gun and shoot the fucker right in the ass. He drops dead, but his tusk is still in the kid. The kid is screaming like a banshee. The uncle pulls up screaming obscenities. We got the kid in the truck. Closest hospital is 7 miles away. Buddy applies pressure to the wound. Uncle is pushing this pickup to its limit. After what seems like an eternity, we make it to the hospital. Kid passed out 10 minutes before we got there. Buddy is awkwardly cradling this 11-year-old. Get him in. While he's in a room, the uncle takes us outside to scream at us. Looking back, he was completely justified. But we were kids too. I rode that excuse like it was made by Bad Dragon. We're in the waiting room and the kid eventually comes out. Other than looking like he just got back from fighting in the Vietnam War, he seems all right. Bloody bandages around his leg. Luckily, it didn't hit a major artery in his leg. We got thoroughly chewed out by his parents. Our pay was long forfeit, but they let us keep hunting hogs on their land. Have another story or two from hunting hogs in their fields. Let me know if you want to hear any. Have 2 more stories about hunting hogs there. The best of the 2 is the story of how we got permanently banned from hunting on their property. Once again, me and my buddy are hunting hogs. Different guns this time. I brought my .22 Magnum rifle and my .410 with some buckshot. My buddy bought a Mossberg 500. Not really the best gun for hog hunting, but if it kills them, it's good enough. About a week after the last story, we came back to hunt some more. Uncle doesn't want to drive us around because of the previous story. We brought my truck this time. Got one of my other friends to drive for us. He brought an M1911 just in case. We get out there and find a group of 30-something. I take the first few shots. After we stop shooting, we go over to see how many we killed. We walk up to the pile we've created and we count 8 or so. Not that good, but we're just getting started. We notice that a few of them have tags on their ears. Here's the unbelievable part of the story. We, all in our late teens who have grown up in the South all our lives, don't think for a second about the ear tags and continue hunting. I knew we were dumbasses, but not this dumb. To summarize, so this post isn't 6,000 characters, so we continued hunting for a few more hours before we realized what the tags were. We killed a couple more tagged hogs throughout the day. Finally, the light bulbs in our heads clicked on, and we realized what we did. We left and didn't tell them about it, but the damage was done. I got a very interesting call later that night. They immediately knew we'd done it, and I didn't even try to save face. We've been back there a few times since, without their permission, of course. My buddy actively scopes out their Facebook page in the summer, and when they go on vacation, we get together and go back there. Have a story about use nearly getting caught, but that's mostly it from me.
A friend told me this is a good place to share spooky hunting stories, so here's one of mine. Be me. Hunting for yotes at night. Poor college student, so all I have to see with is a relatively weak headlight with white and red modes. Leaned up against a post that had weeds growing all around it. Small pond a good ways away, down a hill. Thick forest with a fence running through it on my right. Usually hunt when it's clear and the moon is bright so I can see better, but it had gotten cloudy after I went out that night. Decided to keep trying anyway, watching the pond and surrounding area with the red light, because red light doesn't spooky them much. Eventually see a pair of eyes making their way to the water. Can't make out what the actual animal is at that distance. Waiting for it to get to the water and start drinking. Move to turn on white light and ready my gun. Apparently it hears my clothes rustling or something because it freezes and snaps its head to me. I also freeze. Suddenly, the eyes start moving up, and then keep moving up and up and up. Eventually they're way off the ground. If I had to guess, I'd say they were probably between 6 and 7 feet off the ground, though obviously hard to judge in this situation. It makes a loud, half-chuffing, half-snorting noise and spins to run, eyes still raised. It books it into the trees. Hear it running through leaves and shit. Then the noise stops for an instant before I hear a crash, which I assume was it just jumping the fence. It's gone after that. Freaked out, so I called it a night. Still have no idea what it was. There are no bears around here, and the tiny whitetail wouldn't be anywhere near as tall as that thing was.
This happened when I was a teenager 8 years ago. My family owns a farm in a region of Canada called the Laurentides, which is geologically wise one of the oldest in the world. So while it is moderately inhabited, its forests are very old and fairly large. Our farm itself is at least a century old and was farmed by at least 3 generations before my grandpa, who is already pretty old himself. The context is that after checking some maps, he realized his lot extended a little farther than he thought, and saw that he had been paying agricultural taxes on a strip of woods about 50 meters wide and 300 meters long that he thought didn't belong to him. After realizing that, he decided to clear the space of trees and till the land for future use since he's paying for it anyway. Over the next winter, we lumber the area with a backhoe and chainsaws. In a few weeks, we do a good job of removing most large trees. One day, while uprooting a tree with the backhoe, my grandpa unearthed some red stones that look like a circular structure, which stands out because underground in those fields, the only things are clay and standalone rocks. We are curious and dig around it for fun, showing a structure that looks like a 5 by 5 meter circle. The outside of the bricks is noticeably different from the side that faced the inside of the structure. We talked a lot over lunch breaks of what that could be. My grandpa says that the line where the field ends has been the same since the first owners and no one ever built anything past the woods line, so it is either a natural feature or it is a building that predates colonization, which was pretty recent in this remote region. Work has to keep going, so we leave the structure in the open air over the next few days and keep working. We pile up good trunks to be made into pickets for fences, which can fetch a decent price. My grandpa decided to stop the work for this year as spring is coming, and we have our usual tasks that take priority, so the pickets stay in their piles to dry over the season. Over the next months, we never go there as it is far from the house, and we have no business at that end of the property. One morning at the beginning of the summer, we came with the tractor to pick up a pile of pickets in the semi-cleared area. As of now, it is devoid of tall trees but still covered with small diameter trees and growing shrubs. My grandpa is driving the tractor and I am sitting in the cabin too. We are following the wood line to swerve in at the spot where the pile we want is located. There is a strange smell in the air that we notice at the same time and it keeps intensifying. I can't really describe it since I haven't smelled it before or since, but I know I would recognize it immediately if I encountered it again. It definitely smelled like an animal, with traces of what I'd expect the breath of a vulture to smell like, and it was very strong. I wondered if it could be a cougar, which is rumored to roam through the region once every few years. But I don't know why it would smell like that, and my grandpa seems much more nervous than me, which is soon contagious. He tells me to take the wheel as he opens the side door to look out. I see that he's tensing up as he sniffs the air and looks left to right. Then he jolts and says, "Keep driving straight." He reaches for the beat-up 870 Wingmaster he keeps in the tractor loaded with target loads. He points it out the window. At that point, I'm not that worried as this kind of situation happens fairly regularly with coyotes, where we start an impromptu hunt in the middle of the workday. But I can tell something is off now. He quickly cycles out all the target loads and puts in some BB loads that he keeps next to the gun. He shouts, "Keep driving straight, don't look." I obey more because the ground is bumpy, and I can't take my eyes off the front very long than because I want to, and I don't understand why I couldn't look. I've seen him shoot coyotes and wild dogs before. I try to peek and he sees me from the corner of his eyes. My face suddenly hurts and I feel dizzy as he shouts in a panicked voice, "Don't look!" And I realize my grandpa has just backhanded me. He's never hit me before, even when I was a kid. I feel like my eyes are watering, but I don't want to be a coward, and I tense my jaw and look ahead through my wet eyes. I keep staring in front as I drive, even as he shoots the gun empty, and then adds more manually and shoots them right away. He says, "Drive home," as he keeps pointing at the forest. He only eases down halfway to home, and I ask what happened. Sometimes, when I ask about the war, he indulges me and speaks about it a little and then makes a face that means it is enough, and he won't speak anymore, and I know not to press the subject. He is making that face now. He remains silent till we arrive home. In the house, he just goes to the pantry, pours a big glass of liquor, I couldn't tell any alcohol from another back then, and sat in front of the TV. We didn't go back to work that day. He would get up sometimes and refill his glass. I just hung out helping my grandma around the house while he watched TV. He didn't join us for lunch. The following day, we went back to our regular duties, but we never finished clearing the strip of land. We never even went back for the pickets. Today, the area is completely overgrown and is on its way to looking like the rest of the woods. We kept working the land all the way to the woods, but never doing any work past the ditch that separated the field from the forest. I was always nervous when I hoed the fields and got near there. I started working on the family farm less and less as I went to university and got a job. And when I visited, I never mustered up the courage to ask about what happened, although I knew I must. I know my grandma worried about his drinking in what I now know were his last years. He died 2 years ago before I got around to talking about it. My cousin hunted there and he told me some red rocks are still visible. I wish I had pictures. I will take some next time I go there. It doesn't prove much, but maybe some geologist or archaeologist anon can tell me something about it. It would be a weight off my back.
Alright guys, I've wanted to post this for a while but never got around to writing it. I grew up on a fair bit of land in the floodplain. Dad owns an excavating company and uses an old farm as a base of operations. One day during the summer when I was 14, we were working setting fence posts on a hill called a critter pad, used for keeping stuff out of floods. Dad had an old dump truck, a lowboy trailer, and an old construction office trailer with expanded metal over the windows up there, and he wanted a fence for some reason. It was hard work because the top was covered with a layer of gravel. One of us would dig the post hole and set the post, while the other would work with a pickaxe getting through the gravel layer on the next hole. We finished up pretty early in the afternoon. I played some Vidya. Think it may have been Modern Warfare 2. I got Black Ops way later than everyone else. As it got dark, I realized I'd left my sweatshirt up on the pad, about a 30-minute hike from the house. By the time I got up there, it was fully dark out. There was a full moon, but heavy cloud cover so I couldn't see much. Also a fair bit of ground fog visible from top of the pad. I grabbed my sweatshirt from the post I had left it on and decided to take a few minutes and straighten up the tools we'd left out. Figured it'd earn me some points with my dad. I was most of the way done when I happened to glance down the side of the pad, about 20 feet below, while the moon was out from the clouds, and saw what I thought was a coyote. They usually tend to avoid anywhere near people, so I assumed this guy hadn't noticed me and held still so I could see it better without spooking it. At this point, the creature stood on its hind legs, and what I'd assumed was a coyote stood at least 12 feet tall, judging from the 4-foot top strand of wire on the fence it was next to, and elevation relative to me. Its body and legs looked like a starved canine, but its head was much flatter, but still with a long snout. It stuck its front legs out in front of itself for balance or whatever. I don't know. I froze for a second, then grabbed the pickaxe from where I had it leaned up against the lowboy and noped into the old construction trailer, completely ignoring my fear of spiders, and shut the door behind me. I sat there in the dark for over an hour. I was too terrified at first to even check my phone in case the light should draw whatever the thing was. When I finally gathered some courage or boredom, I used my phone screen for light, little flip phone so not much, and pulled back the shutters a little to look out the windows. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't out there that I could see. I clutched the pickaxe, ready to strike as I pushed the door open with my foot, expecting it to be hiding right there. It wasn't, and I made it back to the house in 20 minutes. I thanked God the terrain is all open and flat. If it had been forested, no way would I have gone back in the dark. I told my dad I brought the pickaxe back because I thought the handle was loose, and Mom gave me a scolding for taking so long. Dinner was ready by then, but generally no fucks were given. I assumed I must have seen a coyote and somehow it had gotten out of perspective, but still I felt weird about the whole thing and never quite felt comfortable going out at night. About 2 years later, I'm 16 and over at my friend's place with Dad and some of his buddies. Friend's grandpa is telling us stories of the old days. Tractors, dragline excavators, and dynamite made repeated features. Gets talking about pulp forest that extends down into the valley from the slope, bordering some of our land. He goes quiet for a moment, then asks us if we want to hear a scary story. Of course we say yes. Dad and buddies are listening as well. He talked about how he went out hunting ducks on the banks of one of the ponds after a particularly big flood. Goes on for a while, but the part I remember word for word was, "And then I smelled something bad like rotten meat." You know that rotten meat smell? Well, I went and followed it along this path, through all them pulp trees as it come down. Damned if I didn't find the strangest thing I'd ever seen in my life. It looked like a dog, but the size of a big bull. Skinny though, no muscle, and the damned ugliest, most evil-looking face I ever seen, like a rot with most of its fur gone. Thing was dead, of course, but I still just got out of there fast as my legs could carry me. Didn't want it stuffed, just wanted out of there. Thing was evil. I looked at my dad. He and his buddies were all staring at each other, rigid as hell. Everyone knew what each other had seen at some point or another. One of our neighbors has had disappearing cows, but other than that, I've never again seen this creature. From that point on, though, Dad always made sure the doors were locked at night, and I put a dresser and bookshelf across my window.
Some OC, maybe the full story may not be, I don't know, be me. Have a large family due to Granddad having about 11 other siblings. Granddad is the third youngest child, youngest son. The second youngest son is Uncle Cleve. Only seen Cleve at family reunions, missing pinky and ring finger on his left hand. Never asked Granddad or Cleve, too scared because I was a little chillin' at the time and was too shy to say much. Be me, about a decade later, a teen now, I've grown a pair, so one night while at his house, I decided to ask Granddad how Uncle Cleve lost his fingers. Grandmother has gone to bed, so he sits back in his recliner and begins his tale. Be Granddad, 15 years old, 1949, living on a farm in East Tennessee. Most older siblings have moved out by now, just me, my brother, and 2 little sisters. Recently, coyotes have been getting chickens. Pa has me and my older brother walking around the property late at night after work is done until about 10 p.m. Carrying a little .22, probably won't do much to a coyote, but Pa will hear the shots. One night after making a few rounds, come back to the house. Pa is sitting on the porch, shotgun in lap. Asks where Cleve is. Cleve is usually back by now. He gets up and we both start walking out towards the barn to check on Cleve. While walking, I heard a few gunshots out by the tree line on the other end of the field. Pick up the pace, Pa calls out for Cleve. No response. Arrived to Cleve on the ground crying and clutching his hand. You pansy, did you get scratched or something? Cleve is missing his bottom 2 fingers. Says a big coyote came at him. PA wraps his nubs up in a handkerchief, then tells him to man up and go back to the house so Sister can tend to him. Wipe tears from my eyes because of this display of fatherly love. He turns to me and says to follow him, and we head into the woods to see if we can bag this coyote. Know these woods well, but still can't shake the feeling of being watched. Despite feeling, keep following Pa deeper into the woods. Further in than I've ever been by now. Scanning around the trees when suddenly bump into the back of Pa. WTF man, look up at him. Frozen, staring at something dead ahead. See a big dead coyote on a rock. Big thing, as my granddad described it, gnawing at this coyote's neck. A few seconds pass. Pa can't tell if it doesn't notice them or if it's just ignoring him, raises his shotgun and fires one shell from it. Thing doesn't even flinch. Slowly looks up at Pa. Mouth opens. More like its jaw dislocates, hangs down a good 5 inches from its head. Inhales, lets out a roar that shakes branches and sends Pa's hat flying off. Pa screams back at it and shoots the other shell straight at its face. Good old Pa. The thing lunges forward. Pa grabs me by the back of my shirt and starts booking it back to the farm. Don't look back. Can hear it thumping behind us. Can feel its breath on the back of my neck. Heart pounding as I can see the light of the house through the trees. Hop over the fence, start running through the field, and turn back head to see if it's still following. Nothing. It disappeared. Tell Pa to slow down and look. He takes this moment to reload his shotty as he walks over, scanning the tree line with me. After what seemed like years, I started walking back to the house. Cleve is in bed. Sisters and Ma cleaned up his fingers and are getting a doctor from a nearby town in the morning. He's pale as a sheet, but otherwise okay. Never saw the thing again, but sometimes at night could hear something outside the house walking around, scratching at the walls. Be me again, now scared shitless because Granddad's house is next to the woods. He smiles and says sleep tight before getting up and going to bed. Realize the old coot was probably fucking with me. Go to the kitchen to get some leftover sausage from that morning's breakfast. Swear I see something moving in the trees out the window.
This all happened back in November of 2018 to the owner of my last company. Be my boomer boss. Rich old fud who travels to canned hunts in the western US. Goes to northwestern Utah for an actual bighorn hunt without fences. Literally the only thing he actually likes to track before killing. Goes with all of his country club boomer fud friends. Rent a cabin and call it camping. Survivorman.gif. 3 days of not seeing a single sheep. 3 days of not seeing any wildlife, 3 days of boomer hunting stories, day 4 and the sun rises, dead silence, not even the usual bird noises. Everyone is a little unnerved, but whatever. Boss and his fud harem start out for a promising ridgeline to spot sheep from. Still absolutely nothing, on the way back to the cabin on a deer trail. Holy shit, what the fuck is that .mp3? 2 deer torn in half and thrown up into the trees above the trail. Deer guts hanging like tinsel on a Christmas tree. Our fearless fuds make haste to the cabin. Get to the cabin and see dead rabbits everywhere. Rabbits look as if they had flown in the cabin at Mach 6. The cabin has a bunch of nice blood splatters where they hit the walls. Smells like rotten carcass everywhere. Rabbits were fresh, so not them rotting. Here's something maybe 200 yards off in the bushes. The sun is starting to set and all are in DEFCON 1. The boss calls me at work and tells me to book him a hotel in whatever town in Utah. I can hear him panic on the phone. Don't ask questions, just book him a hotel. A couple days later at work, come in to see the boss drinking. This man doesn't drink at all, so obviously he's rattled. Relates the whole story to me. Fear was in his eyes. Primal fear. Told me he heard a loud scream while packing up and shithoused the rental Suburban, booking it out of the woods. Said that the locals were acting weird when he brought it up like they knew more than they let on. Said he was out serious money and he left his favorite hunting rifle behind.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.